Hi, Mrs. Jones. Thanks for meeting with me virtually to talk about your concerns about Evan's progress and potential need for intervention in math. Mhm. Yeah, so today we're here. I just want to explain the what we're already doing in the classroom with our differentiated models. I know changing to a block schedule this last year has been a little bit challenging to understand, but we really want to talk about how did we come up with the design for choosing students for intervention and what we're really looking at and how we do that. And then talk about some of the multiple areas or ways that we can provide supports for Evan. Mhm. Yes, yes. So um, in our current curriculum, we're really focusing on student led learning. Yes, yes. We hear that a lot. A lot of teachers or a lot of parents say, in my day we just sat and learned and in the time, it was effective. We're seeing with the 21st century learners that we really want to focus, and research is out there that we really want to focus on meeting the state standards, those common standards, to best meet the needs of students. And by differentiating in the classroom and providing different types of activities within that 90-minute period, we're really looking at maximizing student growth for each individual student. Mhm, mhm. Yes, in that 90 minutes, it within the classroom already, there's a lot of different kind of activities going on. Some students are doing watching videos. Other students, yes, yes, the videos are very similar. Yes, sometimes they're assigned for homework, and you might have seen Evan do them at home. Mhm. That is, yes, that is where students are taking notes. Some students receive guided notes. Mhm. Yep, there's multiple things that meet the needs for individual style learners. Some students choose to take their notes right in a co-writer, right on while they're watching on their computer, right while they're watching the video. Other students prefer to do handwritten notes, and others need the skeleton notes. You're right. Mhm. In the beginning of the years, it's really directed by staff that everybody needs different things to learn. Students took a learning interest survey or a learning style survey and an interest survey, and teachers really look to use those different kind of surveys when they're focusing on differentiation in class to meet the needs where students are at. Mhm. Yes, yes. You're wondering, how has Evan been identified for intervention in algebra? Yes, yes. So our teachers have weekly meetings. They call them PLCs, and they're really looking at the needs of learners. So their first focus 2 years ago was setting those standards. What do we want the students to know? And then how are we going to teach them? And in question 3 and 4, or what we're looking at the third and fourth step, is what do we do when students are struggling? What kind of interventions or strategies do we put in place for the students? Mhm. Yes, because we even have interventions and strategies for students that already know the material. So that in that workshop model in the algebra classroom, students that already have demonstrated that they can do that idea or concept, that if they have an understanding of it, they can work more on the application. How are we doing this in real world? Yes, yes, we do understand that the IM curriculum is different also. Yes, yes. So understanding that Evan is adjusting to a 90-minute block schedule, which is different, and understanding that he did have integrated math or the illustrative math in middle school, so that group style curriculum and problem based curriculum isn't new to him. So what we really did is looked back at previous star scores and his two current star scores. He took star in September, and he took star again in just before Thanksgiving break. Mhm. In previous in middle school, his star scores revealed that he was in that on watch category, and they might have talked to you about the need for potential interventions in the future when he's on watch, some extra practice, some extra assistance. Yes, yes, he did. He did have some of those. Thank you, thank you. Mhm. Yeah. So how we do interventions here. Evan currently fell a little bit below that on watch in the need for intervention in this last star. And we are noticing that his progress checks, quizzes, and grade scores are going down. We also checked with actually, our PLC teams meet in content, but then they also meet across grade levels. So 1 week is content, 1 week is grade level. And we noticed that in his chemistry class, he was really struggling with the math part of the chemistry also. Mhm. Yes, yes. We really want to grab that data from as many points as we can to make a better determination. Again, it's a whole student process. Thank you. Yes. Yes. So I know I'm hearing your concern that Evan might be singled out. And I just want to now talk a little bit about how we provide interventions. It's a three-tiered system. Tier one is more of the interventions that are large group interventions. Tier two is a smaller group, and tier three is even a smaller group, maybe even two, three, at most four students. Mhm. Yes, you're right. So no, no, this is not saying that we're looking at special ed. I know if that is something you would like Evan tested for, that is something we can definitely put in a referral for. But really, we try to go into the intervention process first to meet students where they're at. Yes, yes. In that tier one model, okay. So, for example, we're noticing in Evan's star scores and in his progress checks that he is consistently making a lot of more errors with integers. The adding and subtracting, multiplying and dividing of the positive and negative numbers, especially we get into the fractions and decimals with that. The multi-step problems. Once we're getting beyond when we have x on two sides and we're combining on the same side and then sliding over. So we're noticing that the more steps we're adding to the math, the more he's struggling trying to remember the steps. And then teachers have also identified that he's having a hard time with the graphing portion. Mhm. Yep. So some tier one strategies within the whole class. What we try to do again, it's not in an invasive. Somebody standing right there with him, and he's not going to be pulled out for specialized instructions by any mean in tier one. In tier one, what we'd like to do is provide that repetition and filling in the gaps. So we know that Evan is missing or struggling with the integers. So in Evan's tier one, in one of the workstations, he would be working in a group of maybe 8 to 10 students, and they would be just focusing on the integers as are the positive and negative numbers and combining those when they're working through. Mhm. Yes, it's still going to be supported towards his algebra learning. Yep, in most cases, it is the teacher providing those intervention strategies. In Evan's class, there is a teacher's assistant, and sometimes they help with the in that workshop model. Sometimes they'll be in charge of a group. Mhm. Yes, definitely. It has to be documented. In those PLCs, we're already tracking some of the data and progress of meeting the standards. So when we're doing a tier one intervention, we're actually reporting out every other week at the content level how Evan is doing and making progress and responding to the interventions. Mhm. Yes, some of it is more active engagement. Some of it is we do know with Evan's ADHD, it's hard to pay attention whole group sometimes. There might be too many distracting things. So in that tier one intervention, by having a smaller group, it just allows us to have higher interest and higher or less distracting area. Yes, provided by the teacher. And then if Evan, after a 6-week period, if he's making moderate gains, what we would do is look at potentially extending that tier one intervention for another 6 weeks and see if he's kind of adapted or caught on, and if we filled that gap. If he's making more minimal gains, then we'd look at a tier two intervention. And in tier two, we do reduce the numbers down to a group of 5 or 6. Mhm. Yes. In a tier two intervention, he is definitely working with, at that point, we're bringing in the math coach and more flexible learners. Yes. Yes. The tier two intervention, because we've already set up our workshops for the algebra block schedule, there's a few algebra classes going on in that same hall. So students are already used to going in and out of each other's classrooms. So it isn't anything that looks different currently. Because of the interest groups that are already offered in the differentiation with some of the work, students do float back and forth already. So it doesn't look different for the students going into different groups already. Mhm. Yes. And so in tier two, we are actually reporting out weekly. We're going to report out with the in one week with the specialists that are working with them, and then or the teacher, the para, and the math coach. In the second week, we're actually reporting out to our PLC time. Yep, and that's where we'd be looking at, is it making a difference in other in like his chemistry class also. Mhm. Yes. When we're looking at tier two interventions, we're really looking at highlighting strategies or visual cues. I know with the graphing, we can teach him how to ensure that he's using his graphing. There's also some online graphing sites that we can show him also. Mhm. Yes, yes, and some students already, the classrooms are already using those online graphing sites, but sometimes students don't speak up when they don't know how to use them. So that smaller group tier two intervention can ensure that the students know how to use the technology that they have available to them. Mhm. Yes, yes. So there's always a potential. Again, very similar to tier one. If Evan is making gains, we might consider continuing that tier two for some time, for a little bit more additional time. If he isn't making gains, then we would suggest him for a tier three intervention. Yes, and that is a small group, 2 to 3 students, um, and they tend to be grouped in that deficit area so that the reteaching can happen in their area. There's times that we do put the students into groups where it's interest level. We know students like to learn from other students, but we don't want students to be responsible for others teaching too. Mhm. So the tier three interventions are only led by the teacher and the math coach. Mhm. Yes, we do collaborate with special ed, because we like their intervention strategies, their differentiation strategies, their visual cues, their use of manipulatives. They're awesome at helping us identify some of the more visual learners or some of the other learners that are there. Mhm. Some of the strategies, sometimes it's note-taking strategies, sometimes it's just ensuring that they have what they need, the extra practice. Mhm. Yes. In tier 3, there is again, yes, you said 2 to 3, so it does look different. Tier 3 intervention is actually done during Oriole time. So students are actually assigned. So everybody has a different Oriole time. So students are already moving in the hallway. So they're going to their math coach for that time. Yes, and they're working specifically on the gaps for that learning for that time. You're right, and in that tier 3, there's days where they're working on Alex to make individual progress in some of their, gaps in his gaps, like the integers that Evan has. Some of it'll be the graphing, to help him solidify the ideas of the quadrants and where to graph ordered pairs so he can match up the linears. Mhm. Yes. It would be very specific, it would be more a smaller group. The misunderstandings, if he has questions, he could be more free to ask questions in the smaller group and not feel singled out also. Mhm. Yes. If tier 3 doesn't work, you again, definitely we could look at special education, but right now we really wanna focus on tracking his data, weekly. Definitely. You're so welcome. Again, thank you for the meeting.